Figuring out your goals for your career is sometimes very daunting, but I would argue that every last one of us really does have an idea of what it is that we want to do. It could be a really far-fetched idea, and it could be a perfectly possible idea, but we have those ideas. And what I've found in my experience is a lot of people don't action the things that they want to do because, quite frankly, they've been talked out of it by somebody else, or they've been schooled or socialized not to go above and beyond what they perceive to be their position. And I think that's inherently maladaptive, to be perfectly honest. I think that it would behoove us all to get a lot more familiar with what we actually do want and go and pursue it. Now, sometimes you don't know what you want. And this is where I make the distinction between having goals and creating a wish list. So when I have a client who's really struggling to figure out what they want to do, my favorite question to ask them is, okay, let's pretend I'm a really rich witch and I'm writing the check tomorrow morning. What do you want to do? If you had all the money in the world, all the access, or exactly what you needed to go and do what you wanted to do, what would that thing be? And boom, watch the answers come falling down, okay? So get comfortable with the wish list, give yourself permission, and get them onto an actual list. After that, executing on the list is easy. The big chore is making the list. So having a goals list is an unbelievable and probably the best start you could possibly make with your career. But once you have your list, what do you do with it? Well, here's what you do with it. You go through the list item by item. You just review it, and you look at the item and you say, okay, is this a short-term, a long-term, or a medium-term goal for me? Right. And you ask yourself a second question for each item on your list. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do I feel about this? Is this a 10? Is it a 7.5? Is it a 5? What's its actual weight? The weight that you give a goal equals the priority it is to you, okay? And then dividing them into short, mid, and long term is not difficult, but people struggle with timelines all the time. Well, what's short term? What's mid-term? What's long term? Well, you know what? It's whatever you decide it is. Back in the day when I was coming up through my career, my short term would always be 1 or 2 years. And my long term would be 20 years from now. And I would have a whole pile of midterm things that I wanted to do in terms of professional development to get to my 20-year list, okay? So now in my life, I only have short and long term. I've got no more midterms anymore. But when you break them into short, mid, and long term, just think about what does that timeline look like for you? Is short term 6 months? Is it a year? You decide. Your instincts will actually tell you what works, what's midterm and what's long term. So at the end of the day, your goals list ends up in 3 different categories, short, mid, and long term. And then you take your priorities, this one's a 10, this one's a 9, this one's an 8, and you put them in descending order, and then boom, you've got your list to work from, and you can take those and you look at it once a week, every business week. I do my planning on Monday mornings. I look at my goals list and I say, okay, what needs advancement in either my mid, my short, my mid, or my long term? And then I get those items into my actual calendar so that I can keep my goals moving forward on a really steady basis. And you know, you get into the habit of that and it works like magic and you actually realize your goals. What more could you ask for? So we've talked about the fact that writing up a goals list is daunting, and indeed it is when you don't have a lot of experience in it. But, you know, I always encourage individuals to stop thinking of it as a chore and get a little crazy, allow yourself to get a little crazy, and own some of those ideas in your head, okay? Like if I could go back and start it all over right now, I'll guarantee I'd be a musician. That's what I would really love to do, okay? Now, my life didn't take me down that path, and I'm happy with the way that it went, but I knew instinctively what I wanted to do. And if I had been given permission when I was younger to actually have fun with my wish list, maybe musician would have made it onto the list. Maybe I would have given that aspect of myself due consideration and a little trial to see if it would actually work out. So I always recommend, when it comes to your goals, to treat them like, I call it brain candy. So just have a little brain candy with your goals. Turn it loose, have some fun, be outrageous. I mean, if you know, in my case, one of my favorite expressions is, if you always wanted to be Prime Minister of Canada, write it down. Who's it going to hurt to write it down? Okay? All you're doing is having some fun with yourself, but what you're also doing is you're opening yourself up to other potential that you haven't allowed yourself to date. And that is a really great place to be when it comes to your career. Now, when it comes to your goals, very often individuals have disparate goals. And so they have a natural propensity towards one area of life. They're good at it, they know it's reliable, so they figure that it's more worth pursuing than their intangible idea about something else that they want to do. I refer to that as dualistic thinking, or patriarchal thinking, however you want to frame it. And it's what they call the either or. So in your mind, you've been schooled to only have this or that. Whereas life is 16 shades of gray in between those two. And when you think about it, it's fine for you to develop one area of expertise or to move towards one area of expertise. But is that the sum total of who you are? No. Every individual is multifaceted. So what it really comes down to is, if you feel compelled to pursue a given career, that's absolutely fine. But please do yourself the favor of developing your passion on the side, because it's perfectly possible to do both. And more than that, it's perfectly possible to do way more than just two things, okay? Bearing in mind that subject matter expertise, in order to acquire subject matter expertise, it takes 10,000 hours on average in a subject. So you're pursuing your academic strain, and that's absolutely fine, but make time in your schedule for the passion pursuits. And sooner or later, if you keep them both, if you use time management and you balance the two of them, sooner or later, you might find one competing with the other. And that is a really great place to be, because you've honored yourself and you've diversified your portfolio. Diversification is very healthy. So keep trying those ideas that you think shouldn't really be done or won't be valuable at the end of the day. They will be. When you're writing up your goals and you're trying to establish whether you should pursue one strain versus another, you want to be careful not to limit yourself in that, because first of all, you do need to at least choose one path and pursue it and keep developing it and hopefully eventually end up somewhere. Your passion projects you should maintain and pursue on the side. But sooner or later, you may find that it's time for a transition and your passion really is taking over. You have discovered that you're good at your passion, and now you actually want to transition. There is no harm in that. We are all organic individuals, and we grow and we change through the course of our careers. It's way different being 25 years old than being 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. But I would argue that if you weren't growing and changing, I would actually be worried about you. So I would encourage you to grow and change and evolve along with your career path, and have your marketing tools evolve in accordance with the things that you are learning and developing. And that will put you in a position of being a much more diversified and professionally satisfied individual at the end of the day. Being diligent about your goals is very important, obviously, because the stronger of a plan that you have, the faster you're going to realize it. But diversification is something that happens pretty organically in a career. And you want to give yourself permission to explore as much as possible. So I would encourage you not to be too rigid in your thinking. You know, elders in your community will encourage you to follow this path and not deviate from it. But life is beautiful and it's very rich, and there are problems and solutions absolutely everywhere you go. So I would just really encourage you to staying open to the process and being diligent about revising your goals every year on your birthday, and having your goals keep pace with who you are as an individual internally, instead of just being subject to the external, and your internal never gets the care that it actually needs. And it gets that care by you taking care of your goals every year and growing and allowing yourself to change accordingly.